This is the story of how ordinary people learned to own a car, told through the three problems nobody had solved yet, which were how to drive one, how to keep it running, and how to pay for it. Every piece of modern ownership you take for granted was invented by somebody, and this is where all of it came from. Start in Mannheim, Germany, in the summer of 1888, when Bertha Benz rolled a three-wheeled contraption down her driveway quietly enough that the engine would not wake her sleeping husband. 66 miles stood between her and her mother's house, and covering them made her the first person in history to drive an automobile any serious distance. No road map existed. Fuel could not be bought along the way because the gas station had not been invented, and help could not be called for because the profession of car mechanic did not exist. When the fuel line clogged, she cleared it with her hat pin. When a wire shorted out, she insulated it with her garter. And when the wooden brakes wore down, she stopped at a shoemaker and invented brake lining on the spot. That is where car ownership begins, with a machine that arrived carrying no instructions, no support system, and almost no rules. At first, anybody could drive. Afford one of these hand-built machines and you climbed aboard and went, with no test, no license, and nobody asking questions. That could not last, and the country that ended it was not Germany or America. France beat everyone. On the 14th of August, 1893, the Paris Police Ordinance created the world's first driving licenses, the first number plates, and the first speed limits, set at 20 kilometers per hour in the countryside and 12 in town. 6 years later, France made an actual driving test mandatory. So if you want to blame anyone for your driving test, blame the French. Prussia went harder in 1903, demanding a genuine test of mechanical skill, and the detail that makes this wonderfully German is who ran it. The exam was administered by the Steam Boiler Inspection Association, the same people who made sure factory boilers did not explode. If they trusted you not to blow up a boiler, they trusted you behind the wheel. Britain took a very British approach, selling you a license for 5 shillings, printed on fabric and bound like a little passport, with no test attached whatsoever. That stayed true for 3 decades, because Britain did not introduce a driving test until 1935. America was a beautiful mess. Everything ran state by state, and as late as the 1940s, plenty of states would simply mail you a license for a quarter. Henry Ford himself did not hold one until 1919, at the age of 56. Not until 1959 did every state finally require both a license and a test, which means that for half a century, American driver licensing was chaos. Keeping the thing running is the part of ownership that changed the most, and it started in the hardest possible place. Because between 1900 and 1910, the auto repair shop did not exist. Your car broke constantly, and when it did, you hauled it to a blacksmith, a bicycle mechanic, or a plumber, anybody who could weld a bracket. Cars shipped with tool kits resembling a traveling hardware store, and a Pierce Arrow kit even carried spare engine valves because you were expected to rebuild parts of your engine at the roadside. The rich solved this the way rich people always do, hiring chauffeur mechanics who greased the chassis and changed oil almost weekly, becoming the first people to earn a living working on cars. Then Henry Ford changed everything. The Model T arrived in 1908 at $850, and the assembly line drove that down to $260 by 1925. Cars were suddenly everywhere, and the infrastructure raced to catch up. On the 1st of December, 1913, the Gulf Refining Company opened the first purpose-built drive-in service station in Pittsburgh, selling 30 gallons at 27 cents a gallon and handing out the country's first free road maps. Then came the Golden Age. World War II trained more than 500,000 young men on jeeps and tanks, and they came home wanting to tinker, which produced the shade tree mechanic, the amateur pulling an engine in his driveway with a chain hoist slung over a tree branch. A car then was a fundamentally understandable object. All carburetors and points and timing, adjustable with hand tools, and learnable from a Haynes manual. Stock car racing, the sport that became NASCAR, grew straight out of that culture. The car was not just something you owned, it was something you understood. California's war on smog required cars that could monitor themselves, so a standardized system called onboard diagnostics 2 became mandatory on every new gasoline car sold in America from the 1996 model year. The federal government estimated it added about $61 to the price of a car, because most of it amounted to software. That little port under your dashboard changed everything. A mechanic could now plug in and read exactly what had gone wrong, which was miraculous. And it also marked the beginning of the end for the shade tree mechanic. Cars filled with computers governing the engine, the brakes, the transmission, even the seats, and fixing your own increasingly demanded proprietary software and manufacturer access codes. That is where the right to repair fight began, and it asks whether owning a car also means owning the right to fix it. Massachusetts voters passed the first automotive right to repair law in 2012, then returned in 2020 to extend it to wireless data, winning by roughly 3-1. The automakers sued, and the fight is still going. Electric vehicles will only sharpen it because their software runs far more complex and manufacturers guard it even more closely. Which brings us to the thread that changed the most, which is paying for the thing. In the beginning, you paid cash, all of it. A car was a luxury good like a yacht, and borrowing money to buy one struck respectable people as shameful, which kept the automobile a rich person's toy far longer than it needed to be. General Motors fixed that in 1919 by creating the General Motors Acceptance Corporation, known today as Ally Financial. You put roughly 35% down and paid the rest in installments, an arrangement everybody called selling on time. Henry Ford hated it. Morally opposed to consumer debt, he countered in 1923 with the Ford Weekly Purchase Plan, which was layaway. You deposited $5 a week at your dealer, and only once you had paid in full could you drive the car away. Ford believed Americans should save first and buy second, while General Motors believed Americans wanted the car now and would pay later. History delivered its verdict fast, because by 1925, about 3/4 of all new cars were bought on time, and even Ford surrendered and opened his own finance arm by 1928. The car did not just teach America to drive, it taught America to borrow. Selling millions of new cars carried a consequence nobody planned for, because people traded in their old ones. Dealers first treated trade-ins as pure liability, and in some cities, owners literally abandoned Model Ts in fields. Then somebody realized there was gold sitting in those old cars, and by 1927, America was selling more used cars than new ones. Leasing came next, and its origin gets misreported constantly, so let me set the record straight. You will read everywhere that Zolly Frank started car leasing in 1914, and that date is simply wrong. Frank and his brother-in-law founded a company called Four Wheels in 1939, starting with 75 cars leased to a single client. A new Chevrolet then cost about $495, and Frank worked out he could lease it for $45 a month and still make money. He was right. So where has all of this landed us? In a very strange place. According to Experian, the average new vehicle loan now runs about 69.5 months, and nearly 30% of new car loans stretch between 73 and 84 months, which means 7-year car loans are now normal. The average new car payment sits at $767 on an average financed amount of $43,582, and Americans collectively owe about $1.67 trillion in auto loan debt. There was one last attempt to reinvent ownership entirely. Around 2017, Volvo, Cadillac, Porsche, and BMW tried the car subscription, one monthly fee covering the car, the insurance, and the maintenance. It sounded like a streaming service for automobiles, and it mostly failed. The reason is the most poetic fact in this whole history, because subscriptions ran headlong into dealer franchise laws written a century earlier to protect the local dealer. The past reached out and grabbed the future by the ankle. So come back to Bertha Benz clearing that fuel line with her hat pin. In a little over a century, we went from a machine with no license, no gas station, no mechanic, and no financing, to a world where you need a state permit to drive it, a computer to diagnose it, a franchise dealer to sell it, and possibly an 84-month loan to afford it. Learning to drive made us mobile, learning to maintain made us capable, and learning to finance made us, for better and worse, a nation of borrowers. The car was always sold to us as freedom, and it truly was. But freedom, it turns out, arrives with a maintenance schedule, a licensing exam, and a monthly payment. We do not just buy our machines, we build entire worlds of rules, skills, and money around them, until we can barely remember a time when owning one was as simple as borrowing a permit off your sleeping husband's desk and driving off into the dawn. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoy automotive history that actually checks its facts, subscribe for more stories from the strange side of the car world. Drive safe out there.